welcome to today's webinar series. Today is hosted by Hawkridge Systems. My name is Scott Woods, Product Manager for Composer, also Inspection and Model-Based Definitions. This is our third-part webinar of a three-part series. So the last two Fridays we covered some material that pertains to this webinar as well. I'll go ahead and recap that a little bit, just in case any of you didn't attend the first two. And if you didn't, it's not a big deal. This covers new content as far as interactive outputs from Composer, linking and stuff like that. Okay, so I'd like to just kind of recap a little bit what we covered last week. Basically, what is Composer? What does it do? And what we're seeing in the majority of the companies that we visit and kind of, assess the processes and introduce Composer is most of the time, all the design is being done in 3D. In this case, it's being done in SOLIDWORKS, and the end result is something like a PDF or a Word document, or we're going to be putting on this on the website. Typically, it's a 2D output currently, and of course, being cutting edge, we want that to be a 3D output. And so Composer can offer that, but it can also just improve your current process, keep it 2 dimensions, and just make it faster. What we found with this process is typically about an 80% time savings once we upgrade to Composer. So, excuse me. So, with that said, the solution in Composer, instead of going CAD and then trying to do configurations and screenshots and trying to get that into a 2D file to bring into Word, and then you're breaking that associative link, and it's just exploding, and every time you want to go back and update that, you have to start from scratch. With Composer, it keeps everything associative. So you have your SOLIDWORKS models, you bring those into Composer. Keep in mind, even if it's not SOLIDWORKS models, we can still bring that and link that in Composer. It doesn't have to be SOLIDWORKS. And then we output the controlled document. In this case, in the slide, it's that 2D PDF if you wanted to do some kind of like IKEA-style assembly manuals. But we can also do video, as we showed last week, and we can do interactive content, which we'll be showing today. So just a brief agenda. What we're going to cover is we're going to do a little Composer overview in the software, just to give everybody kind of an idea of the interface. And then, okay, so let me go ahead and launch Composer. I like to show this sometimes with it closed, just to show how fast Composer actually opens. But additional to that is the file size. So you'll see that's about a 2 meg file. If I click on it, I'm going to load all the content that we did over the last 2 Fridays, and it's just a matter of a couple seconds. So with that said, it is loaded now and has everything to do with this model, and it's a 2 meg file. What we're seeing typically is about a 40 to 1 ratio, and so this assembly in SOLIDWORKS is about an 80 meg file. We bring that to Composer, we get a 2 meg file. That's going to relate directly to performance, and especially when we're talking interactive content, as we're doing today, that's your interactive content. That's going to be the file that somebody's going to rotate, zoom in and out, explode, 2 meg file, so when they download it off your website, it's not going to take forever. They can also stream it directly through Internet Explorer as well. Okay, so a quick interface recap is there's an assembly tree in Composer. That's going to be your assembly, any other components within that assembly. What I mentioned over the last 2 webinars is that this is obviously an imported part or imported model, was not modeled in SOLIDWORKS. That's intentional because I like to show how it doesn't have to, we don't have to use SOLIDWORKS, and the structure of this model is pretty horrible too. There's really no sub-assemblies. There's the 2 that we made last week, but other than that, it's pretty horrendous model as far as that goes. And that's on Composer, how we can clean it up, how we can still use these assemblies that aren't ideal. With that said, all the tabs at the top are going to be features in the software, and so if we want to go through and move something, that's going to be under the Transform tab. And again, this gets into what we were doing over the last couple weeks, but just as a quick recap, let me go to this guy here. So we have this assembly. We're going to go in and I'm going to just turn that guy off there. And so let's say that we want to create a quick exploded view. That's going to be this linear explode. We can grab all these parts. We can just go ahead and just shatter it and pull everything apart. There's translate mode where we can go ahead and just grab items, have this little gizmo, move them to where you want to specify that. Also, as you can see on the left there for length, we can go here and we can key in that length as well. So, so really all the tabs in Composer are grouped together, and in each tab is all the features needed to do that operation. For transform, these are the tabs we need to do to move anything. If you go to author, these are the tools that we need to do any kind of annotations and images and dimensions and stuff like that. And you think 2 dimensions. Okay, so with that said, let's go ahead and get into the fun stuff here. So what I did last week is we made a couple marketing images. Actually, that was 2 weeks ago. We made these marketing images, and then we went through and started creating step-by-step assembly instructions. So as you can see, these steps on the left, and this is, I'm in author mode, right? I'm working in Composer, so everything you see right now is stuff that I have, tools that I have because I have Composer installed on this machine. So I have the ability to fully edit this file, and I can choose, you know, what color things are, where things are located, and all the steps of the process, which I'll just kind of thumb through here in case you weren't with us, just to see what those were and how we actually put those together. So something like that. Okay, so with that, you'll see that as I'm going through one step to the other, it's animating. So when you are in Composer and you're saying, hey, you know, I want this part to be, I'll just do a quick example here. We'll take a part, drag it out there, create a new step. Now if I go from this step to that step, you'll see how Composer automatically animates between the two. So there's really no animation skills needed to develop animations in Composer, and your interactive content should be animations because it's already built in. So with that said, Composer does the animations for you, and there's a full timeline we're going to get into here as well, where we have full control over that animation. But really, 80 to 90% of the work is already done for you, and you don't even have to mess with the timeline if you're not comfortable with it, because Composer is actually doing all these transitions right on the fly. If we're going to view this in the player, what's going to happen is we're going to see all of these steps, and they're going to be animated between each other. So we could put this on your website, and whoever has the player installed could visit that, view it, and see it all live, just how we're seeing now. It just has all the authoring tools removed. If you don't want your customer to have to install anything, we save this as an exe file. I just wanted to throw that in there to show how easy it was to do. Typically it works, so you can trust me on that, hopefully. Okay, so we have this content that is already automatically animated, and we can thumb through each one. Also in the timeline, we have a structured timeline here with the views that have been imported in, something like that. And we did this last week. And if you weren't here for that, all you do is you grab the view, you drag it in the timeline, it creates that position, and then it allows us to just go ahead and animate it like that. So what we can do with that is now adjust this timeline or use parts from it as we see fit. So let's say that we have this animation. I'm going to go ahead and just play through it here. And at the very end of the animation, we want to do some kind of fly through, we want to rotate the model or something like that. And that's something you can't really show with procedural steps, because with procedural steps, we're going from point A to point B. And when you go from point A to point B, they're pretty linear movements, such as that. So if I wanted to spin this guy around and take a look at different angles, I'd want to now do that in the interactive timeline. That way, when I actually view this in the player, we can actually see that video. We can also save that as a video, and if it's in our PDF or Word document, link to it. That way, when you have this document on the shop floor and somebody's going step by step through the instructions, they can click on a link. It's going to play a video, and it'll go right back to their procedures that they're working on. So in order to do that, we'll go back to the timeline, and let's go to something like this guy here. We'll go and just drag it in, and I want to do a little rotate. So we have camera controls as well. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and create a camera key, and we'll just maybe do a little rotate it to a different angle, something like that. Do another camera key, come over here, maybe rotate it again, camera, and then you'll see I have this camera view here that I want to to copy, which is this angle right there. I'm ending it here, so I think I'll give it a little bit more just so I can get back to that angle. And I want to take this camera and actually copy it by holding down Control. So now when I look at it and I play that, we can do a little spin of the model. And it's going to go back exactly to where it was because I copied that camera. And so now that I put that little spin in there, you'll see because I made edits, here at the top it added what's called a marker. It marked a view 31 and also a view 31 because we pulled from the same one. But what I'm going to do is we're going to call this start. We'll call it maybe rotate or fly through or something like that. We'll call this end, rotate. And now I have this section of the timeline that I can use for anything. I can say that as a video, or I can reference it in my document. For instance, let's say that we're getting through the steps, and we've just now went through and we've assembled this guy. So now I want to jump into the animation to kind of show what we made, and then we'll jump back into here. And I briefly did show this last week, kind of as a little teaser lead into this presentation. I'm going to show it a couple of different ways how we can do it on the fly here. So one way to do this is if we go to these built-in image library that comes with Composer, is we have like play buttons and rewind and repeat and stuff like that. These are really convenient that they're already here. They keep in mind they're just images, so I drag and drop that in, drops it in as an image. If I went into Google Images and I typed in anything, if you didn't like this button, you can pull different images, bring them into this library and use them over and over again. But for this instance, we're just going to go ahead and use the one that comes with it. And what I want to do is make a new view of that, reposition it so it's right there after the current one. And I'm going to go ahead and add what's called an event link. So in the properties of that button, I have a link. And in this link, I just want to reference the animation sequence of what I just made. So play marker sequence. And I want to find the one I just made, which is the start rotate. And just say OK. And really, it's as easy as that to now when I export this out as an exe or view it in the player, that whoever's going through this document, what they'll have is the ability to go through these steps. And then once they get to a step with this play button, they hit the play button. It jumps into the timeline and it plays that animation like that. And then it stops at that last timeline. So at this point here, I'd want to say, OK, let's go ahead and maybe put a pause or a stop, or let's go and put a stop. You can put any kind of imagery or text, or you can even have it so if they click on the model, it does this. But really, all I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this guy, and I want to do a link to this as well. And I want to say that whenever this is selected, I want to go back to the view where I just were, which is the view 32. And let's go ahead and play this again. So just as an example here, we hit the let's go ahead and bring those guys back. I made that part last week, and it just seems to be playing tricks on me here. But if I hit the play button, jumps into the animation, rotates around, stops. Get that stop, be like, okay, I'm happy with that. We can even put like a replay, and you can replay that over and over again. And then we hit stop. It goes back to our views. And then we have the ability to go through and go to each one. I'm going to go ahead and just delete that guy because it's being a little brat there. Okay. All right. So with that said, we can create all of our steps of the process, and then we can bring those steps into the animation timeline. In the animation timeline, we have full control over setting, distances for time or doing our own rotations like this. But the whole purpose of that is not to make an animation. The purpose of this is to make little aids for our assembly instructions. And so when we go to output this and we want to show these different animations or interactive content in the player, we can do that by 1, opening up this file with the Composer player, or 2, saving it out as an exe, which we've already tested twice, and it was, for whatever reason, it quit working. So I'm going to not do that. But what I do want to do is I want to test this in the player, which we'll do right here. So, which will be the exact same experience as you get from the exe, right? This would be it'd be identical looking to it. So by default, you'll see that it hides those views, and we can control if those views are available or not. So what we can do is we can actually disable them, so when they're viewed in the player, they cannot see the views. So it really depends on who's putting this together, kind of personal preference of how you want that end experience to be. One, you could have these so you go through and you just thumb through each one. But if you want to set this up to where whoever's viewing this does not have control over skipping steps, such as this, because I can actually skip steps through here, we can actually limit that and force them to go through every single step, which I'll show here in just a minute. But before that, I would like to show this step here. We have this play button. Now what it's going to do is it's going to play the animation and actually jumps into the timeline, but the end user has no idea that there's actually a timeline here. All they see is, the interface doesn't change. They hit the button, something happens, they're like, okay, they're going to replay that or not, and that jumps back to our steps. Now they have the ability to click on these to jump through the steps, or we can come back into here. So the next step of our interactive publications is actually make authoring buttons. So what I can do is I can say all buttons, and this is just an option. You can just say, forward and next, or control which buttons are on which view. And so some views you can, or some steps you can skip, and other steps you have to actually see. So with that said, let's go ahead and just resize these guys, make them a bit bigger, and I want to go ahead and throw on a magnetic line to take these guys and really clean them up. This magnetic line is just like it's a line that we can use to attach, make sure that everything is lined up and looking nice, something like that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and update this view with that, and then I want to take these buttons and I'm going to push them to every other one of our views in this document. Something like that. Okay, so now that those are all in those views, let's go ahead and come up here. We'll have where the buttons now are actually behind the bill of materials. So in that case, what we can do is we can select them, move them over. I don't want to move that over. I want to take these guys. And really, this doesn't matter where I move that right now. It's just kind of in the way. I want to move it over to this side. I'm going to leave that there. And so what I want to do is I want to create a new view with those positioned. Let's go back to this guy. And then I just want to push that data, what I just did, back into what I made. And that's as easy as selecting them, going up. We'll push it here. So anything you do in Composer, you can just push it around from view to view and use that to control where they're actually positioned. So now that I have them here, I can go ahead and say I want those guys anywhere there's a bill of materials like that. I'm going to go ahead and push that to those guys to go ahead and clean everything up. Something like that. Okay, so now that I have the document looking how I want, I'm going to go ahead and just save it. Let's go ahead and shrink it down. And then let's see how that plays in the interactive player. So you'll see that the views are missing. Oh, I actually turned them on, right? So they're there. But typically they'd be missing like that. And so whoever's viewing this, you can control, what steps they have to see. So I hit a next step and it goes to the next. I hit next, it goes to the next. I don't have the ability to actually skip steps. You can see that everything transitioned over and it actually animated. So everything's a nice, clean transition from step to step. Now, another thing we can do is we can put a disclaimer in here. So say that this is like a, maintenance manual or something. You can say, hey, before you take a screwdriver to this thing, you have to unplug it. And by clicking here, you agree that you've unplugged the thing. You have a little checkbox there. And basically, it's the exact same thing. It just takes you to the next step and say, yep, I agree, I've unplugged it. And now it takes me to the, the options for taking it apart. So just kind of decrease liability and safety and stuff like that. All right, so I have this part here. you'll see this is the animation we did last week, where it just goes through and it plays through to those steps. Now I didn't put a home button here, and so you'll see how we can actually create these dead ends, something like this, which is not ideal, but it's good to show, just in case have you ever experienced that, like, oh, I don't have a button back. That's because in the one that we just developed has that return button that wasn't in here. So, okay, so now let's say that we wanted to do something similar to this, but we actually wanted to do it in like a Word document. So I'm not going to render out this video that we just made because just time constraints just would take too long to render out. It takes about 5 minutes, which we did last week if you guys attended. But basically what I want to show is the ability to go to something like this where we output those images. We've developed this Word document, and this is something we made last week. And if you weren't here, all it was we took all these images we made, we hit Save As Image, exported them all in one shot, and that updates everything, you know, keeps it linked up to SOLIDWORKS. And so what's happening is this Word document is referencing this folder that has these images. If you go to insert an image into any of these kind of programs, you'll see that there's an option for insert end link, which not only embeds the image into the document, but it also retains an associative link to it. So your document has an associative link to the image or to the video or whatever it is, and then that video or image or whatever it is, the publication, is linked up to Composer, and the Composer is linked to your CAD model, which is in this case SOLIDWORKS. We've got SOLIDWORKS, Composer, Word, our images, then Word, and everything is still linked up even though we're dealing with static images. In any other process you try to do this with, you're going to draw a line in the sand, you're going to break that associativity. If you go back to SOLIDWORKS and try to update it, you have to then export images, you know, update your configurations. It's just a mess, and that's the whole point of this interactive publications, to eliminate that waste of time. But with that said, I would like to go through here and actually link this to that video. So if I go into Word and I go to this video here and I hyperlink it, and I just want to go ahead and click on that, and just like that I've created an interactive document. I mean, it's literally that easy. So from Composer we save out the images, from Composer we render out the video, and then from here, you know, you go ahead and you click on that link, and it's going to launch the video and play it. And so you have this PDF on the shop floor that goes through all the procedural steps. There's something that's really important that you'd like to identify. Somebody clicks on that, opens up the video, plays it, they go back to the PDF on the machine and go through the document. Now the benefit of doing it this way is this is a PDF and you can still print it. I'm saying PDF because you can save a Word doc as a PDF. It's easy as a save as, and the links will still work in that. So with that, we have this interactive document. You can't rotate it, it's not a 3D model. However, using the player, we can combat that, how it actually does work. So there is another instructions of an exe, and if I open that, you'll see how everything is all-inclusive. And so we have the player embedded, we have the Composer file embedded, and it's going to go ahead and view all that content in an interactive format. And anything in this file, we can still link to that Word document, or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be Word, right? That could be an InDesign or an Excel sheet or even a web page or InDesign. It doesn't matter. Any of those programs that take text, take images, create hyperlinks will function for this purpose. And we get something like this. We have this interactive document. I can thumb through. I can go to all the steps of the process. If I have any questions, you know, we have the ability to rotate, look at different angles, and really interrogate the model, which you can't do in a 2D fashion. So if we had this Word document or this PDF that all these steps of the process, all these images, any of these images that have a video associated to them, you can click on those links or text, open up that video, and if you wanted to be able to rotate the model, and let's pretend this is the right model, and I say, hey, if you click on this, it's going to open up that EXE model, it would do the exact same thing. So it'd be as easy as hyperlinking it here. And let's go ahead and click on that guy there. Then when everybody views that, they'll say okay. They would like to see the 3D model, and it's going to open up that exe. So in that case, you could have the same document. It would just use the player to open the file. You get the exact same end result here, which is your 3D model. And that's linked to from the Word document. We can go ahead and take a look at things, hide things, select, isolate. There's all sorts of tricks here that we can actually use to view this model in an interactive format. All right, so let me go ahead and close that down. So we kind of showed a couple of different ways of showing this. As the exe, as the video, but I think the most important thing to take away from this presentation is not these individual publications. Sure, I mean, Composer is capable of imagery and videos and exes, and you can even take the player, which is an ActiveX control, and you can use that in like Internet Explorer or PowerPoint or something and actually embed these things into these other programs, and each one of those are really good outputs. But I wouldn't tie yourself to a single one, because what we can do is demonstrated here is if you have a purpose and you're like, my purpose is to have computers on the shop floor, remove paper, and have everybody viewing this in interactive format. The player is an option, but maybe it's overkill. Maybe what you really do need is a simple PDF on those machines that has all the steps of the process, like this, with some text, maybe not that much text. We're trying to eliminate text. And then if something is confusing, they can't tell it from the steps, we can either link that to a video or you link it to a 3D model to actually view that in more of a interactive format. Then say, okay, I got my answer resolved, go back to the PDF and continue with the assembly instructions. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and open this up for questions. I see that we had a couple questions come in, so I'll go ahead and address those now. Before we do that, I did want to show where the other two videos are saved. So it's this guy right here. So if you want to take a look at that, it's actually it's on our website for the Composer page. I'll go ahead and show you guys exactly where these are at. And just so you guys know, the website, our website is undergoing construction right now. So if you're going to view these in the next week or so, the videos are going to be all the way down at the bottom because they're the most recent. We got instructions part 1, part 2, and but after a couple weeks, these will actually be at the top of the page and in their own category. In order to get here, what you do is you go to our main website, go to tutorials, go to Composer tutorials, and then again at the bottom of the page. So okay, so thank you for attending. This kind of wraps up what we had for you today. I'm going to open it up for questions over the next 5 minutes, and I'm going to go ahead and review the questions that came in right now, and I'll go and answer those in just a couple of minutes here.